Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you pretty much start to finish how I made this extra long mini mum that's blinged and also has a custom cutout. Uh, you're not going to see me attach every sticker. You're not going to see me make the design and make the custom cutout. But besides that, you're going to see just about everything else. Right now, I am cutting out the acetate or luster ribbons for the streamers. If your roll is a gold label, it's luster. If it's a silver, it is acetate. They both work excellent for homecoming mums. I'm cutting these at 17 inches long for this extra long. For a regular mini or peewee, I do about 12 inches, but for a extra long, I go 17 inches, but I go a little, you see I'm going over that. That is because I'm cutting a little extra for the backer. So I want my streamers and my braid to be 17 inches long. So that means I need to go at least an inch, possibly 2 inches for the backer. I actually prefer to go about 1.5 inches to 2 inches because sometimes an inch is not enough. But just keep in mind, if you tell people that your streamers or your braids or whatever length, you need to add a couple of inches for attaching to the backer. This is the 2.5 inch width luster. You see mine's gold label. I prefer the luster. It's a little bit less expensive at some places. I feel like it creases better and you know, it matches up fairly well with the acetate. Some colors are a little bit different, but if you've got a mix of both luster and acetates, you're going to be fine as long as they're the same brand. If the colors are a little bit different, don't worry about it. This is a silver ribbon. It's actually from Dollar Tree. It's a silver metallic ribbon. I don't know what type of ribbon to tell you that it is, but it's a silver metallic and it is textured as well. I also believe it's 3 inches wide, if I remember correctly. I know it's wider than the 2.5, so I'm thinking it's 3. It may be like 2.75, but it's a pretty wide ribbon. I'm using a 5.5 inch backer. I'm not sure if I said that already. And I'll also be using a 5.5 inch flower as well. Before I attach the streamers, I'm going to first lay them out and make sure that I've got them exactly how I want them. So you'll see me lay them all out, and also it's to see if I've got enough, see if I've got it wide enough, how I want it, and the colors where I want them. So I will lay them out first a lot of times just to make sure it's how I want it. Plus I'm adding some glitter ribbons, so I'm going to lay those glitter ribbons on there too and see which way I like them the best. So I always do this uh, on a minimum. I do this because I only have one layer of ribbons, so I want to make sure the ribbons look just perfect because I don't cover them up with a bunch of stuff. These are the focal point. Not necessarily the ribbons, but I put stickers all over the ribbons, and so I want to make sure that's another thing. I'm going to be putting names and mascots and school and stuff and you know, numbers and years and stuff on these ribbons. So I need to make sure that I'm going to have enough room for all that as well. And I also want to make sure I have plenty of blue showing because I'm going to use silver glitter vinyl. If it wasn't blinged, I'd probably use white vinyl. So of course that's got to go on the blue to really stand out. So I got to make sure I've got enough blue showing, and that's another reason for laying out these ribbons like this. But you see that is I can't talk. That is royal blue diamond dust ribbon that I just laid up there, and I want to make sure that it shows. And then I'm considering adding some more there and tapering it, not making it as long as the other ones, but tapering it up a little bit just to make sure I have plenty of ribbons to put those stickers on. So if you don't use the same style as me, if you're not doing a mum with a single layer of ribbons and putting a bunch of vinyl on there. You don't have to think this as thoroughly as I'm doing, but if you are using one layer of ribbons, then I do suggest you make sure that they are overlapped like I have them. That way there's no gaps and it looks nice and full, even though it's not heavy and it doesn't have a lot of it doesn't have all these layers. You can still make it look full by overlapping those ribbons. So the reason for me taking all this time and doing this is because of what I said. So, you know, people don't really understand a lot of times on the cost of our mums. And this is one of the things you got to think about, because even though this is a mini mum and it doesn't have but one layer, I put a lot of work into this and a lot of thought. So even though it's not some big heavy thing, that doesn't mean that a lot of work and a lot of thought went into making that mum. So that's just something for you to think about if you are selling mums. Now you may wonder why I clipped those little alligator hair clips on the bottom of that ribbon. It's just to straighten it out. Also, that helps too after you hang it up when you're finished. If you have a ribbon that's really curly like that, you can put, you know, like clothespins. I mean, you'd have to be careful with clothespins because they might pinch the ribbon a little bit. But some kind of heavy clips like this, they don't even have to be very heavy. Just clip them on there, and you can hang that up and leave them on there as long as possible, and that will help straighten out those ribbons. Also, like gluing a trinket or some bling at the bottom of the ribbon will help straighten it out and weigh it down so it doesn't curl way up. That's one of the downsides to that silver ribbon, is it's not a very long roll, so it's very curly. Now I'm also clipping, you can see I'm clipping the ribbons to the back or there. And that's just to hold them in place, because I can't tell you how many times I have the ribbon exactly where I want it. I staple it, and as soon as I press the stapler, the ribbon moves. It's so infuriating, because then I have to take out the staple, because again, you know, if you're working with a bigger mum that has a bunch of layers, or even if it's a mini mum with a bunch of layers, you don't have to be so cautious about that. But when you're working with one layer of ribbons and you're overlapping them and trying to get them to look just perfect, then it really takes a lot of time. So in some cases, doing it this way is actually just as much work as doing several layers. So really think about, you know, decide how you want to do them. If you like this layout though, and design is very, very popular. It's very popular. I just kind of made it up on a whim for somebody, and everybody loved it, and so it's really still one of my biggest sellers on Etsy. People love it. I know part of it is because it's looks different than most of them, and because of all the vinyl, and I use different fonts on the vinyl. So just really take my time on these and try to make each one unique and special. And you can see I put a lot of work into the ribbons and making sure that they're overlapped. And sometimes it's even better if you hold it up like this before you staple the ribbon, just to make sure it's going to flow where you want it to. And especially on these extra long ones, it's a little bit more difficult for when I lay the ribbon down. Even though it looks like it's perfect laying down on the table, sometimes when you hold it up, it's not so perfect. It's not, there'll end up being a gap. So a lot of times, especially when I'm not working on camera, I will hold the backer up and staple the ribbons that way, because then I know exactly where they're going to lay. Same thing when I'm attaching braids and chains, I'll hold them up and then staple the braids and chains on, because then you know for sure how they're going to hang. will tell you sometimes with the white ribbon, I will go ahead and double up the white ribbon just to make sure it stays nice and crisp and white, because when you layer white with any dark color, it fades the white out a little bit or kind of grays it a little bit. It just kind of depends on the mom. It does bother me to double up just the white ribbon because you can tell when it's hanging, you can see that there's double of the white, and it kind of messes with the design a little bit. So I have to kind of weigh, my thoughts on that. Like, do I like it with the double white, or do I like it, great where it's not as crisp and white, but it's the design of one layer of ribbons overlapped is more important. So I have to decide which way is more important, if that makes sense or not, because it does kind of look funny, to me it does, if I have one layer of blue ribbons but doubled the white ribbons. So just imagine that in it, because when you hang it up or hold it up, those two white ribbons will come apart anyway. They're not going to stay flat together unless you like glued them, but then you'd be able to see the glue and that would look weird. So honestly, I have done it both ways. I really just prefer to leave it alone as one layer of ribbons, but think about that for your mums if you're doing one layer of ribbons. I also decided to add in another little layer of white ribbons, but this time a 1.3 inch, 1 5/16 inch number 9 ribbon, whatever size you want to call it. It's any of those three. But putting that layer in there also just kind of broke up those two blues, since I was layering a blue on top of a blue, and it just, I thought it really helped the mum too. You know, it gives it more depth, or just help the design, just breaking up that blue and then also changing the size of the ribbon too. And it kind of helped with the blue diamond dust, since that is a number 9 ribbon as well. Just thought it made it look more cohesive maybe. And then also with the tapering, it helped taper that up at a more gradual pace. I was just much happier with it. So you see, I cut ribbons at the beginning, and this is, you know, in my mind, this is how it's going to look, but then you have to kind of adjust that because it doesn't turn out in reality like it is in your head. So I'm constantly having to change up my ideas and plans from what I had originally thought, even if something as simple as the ribbons like that. Now what I did there on the backer was I wrote her name, and I also wrote that it's a mini extra long bling, so I wouldn't forget, because I've got several mums that I'm working on at once, and that just really helps me out to do that little trick. Now I'm going to start cutting some ribbons for the backer. Okay, so on the length for the ribbons on the backer, for a full-size mum, a regular mum, you go 6 inches, and you can go longer if it's a bigger mum. You can make bigger loops. But I also tone it down for my mini mum. So this is an extra long. It's still going to be like a good size mum. So you can go 5 inches, or you can do the 6-inch length. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, and I want to keep it within the backer, so that the backer is 5.5. So that's why I'm pretty sure I'm doing 5 inches. I could be wrong there looking at the mat. It should be 5 inches, but sometimes I will do 6, but it will make them bigger and come off the backer more or longer. So think about that, you know, like with a ring mum, I'm doing like, I think 2-inch length for the little 2-inch backer. For a 4-inch mum, you know, for the really small minis, or if it's a wrist mum or something, a lot of times I'm just doing 4 inches. So a lot of times I will go with that, the size of the backer, for how long I make the ribbons, the length of the ribbons for the loops. So that's just a little quick guide for you to think about. You don't have to go by that, but it does help. thinking that silver ribbon must be a 2.75 because it's not much wider than that 2.5 blue. The reason why I'm doing the blue on the inside is it's just going to give those loops more depth. You're going to look at that mum from different angles and you're going to see that blue shining through that silver. You're going to see it on the inside, and so it's going to give it more depth. Also, doubling the loops up also helps make them stronger and thicker so they won't get damaged as easily. I do love to put different colors of ribbon together for the loops. I like to have something on the outside, you know, like a pretty silver or glitter or something, and then, you know, a solid color on the inside. And you can do that vice versa too. You can put the glitter on the inside, so when you look at it from the side, you see the glitter. But you can also keep it like white to white or whatever. But I really like doubling up the ribbons, especially for the mums that are, you know, that have extras or that are more expensive. They pay for bling and stuff. That's just another way to kind of give them a little extra something. So I really, really like doing that. And then I'm also layering that diamond dust on there, so there is some blue on the outside too. And I just think it steps up those loops. It just makes them look so much prettier. Now, if you're using a wired ribbon, you know, I love to use wired ribbons for the loops on the backers as well. I like to take off the wire. You don't have to. Some people don't. I like to take them off, take them out, because, you know, when someone's wearing a mum, it's constantly going to get bumped and you know, just smushed and stuff, and those wires are going to smush. If somebody bumps you or bumps the child, then that loop is going to get smashed and it's going to stay because of the wire. So if you take the wire out, it's just going to form a nice loop, and it's not going to do that. But if you use a wired ribbon, please be sure to layer it with an acetate or a luster or whatever, a plain ribbon, because just the wired ribbon by itself, I don't like to do that because it doesn't hold its shape as well. It's going to be flatter of a loop. It's your decision how you make your mum. I'm just telling you, I personally prefer to layer it with like an acetate or a luster or something, because it's going to make a much nicer loop. Again, think about your budget. You don't have to do everything the way I do it. This is just my preferences. This is how I make this mum. So, you know, get tips and ideas from me and take what you like. And if there's something you don't like, you don't have to do it my way. Do it your way. Do what works best for you. What I'm doing now is I'm going to mark the backer where these first 3 loops go, just so I remember where to staple each one of them. It doesn't have to be exact, but it's really going to help me out on exactly where to put them at, so they don't get all messed up and off-centered and have one going in too far, or, you know, too close together. It just really helps me as a guide. first I'm going to attach these ribbon spikes, and I cut these at half the length that you cut for loops. So since my loops were 5 inches long, I cut these at 2.5, because when you make a loop and you cut a ribbon at 5 inches and you make a loop, the loop is going to be 2.5 inches long. So I want the spikes to be, or tails, whatever you want to call them, ribbon tails, ribbon spikes, they are going to be the same length as the loops. So if that's what you're wanting, if you're wanting them longer, then cut them longer. And that is blue and silver diamond dust ribbon. And you see, like I said, I marked for the loops, so I know exactly where to attach these because I want them between those first 3 loops. When you attach your next layer of loops, no matter how many loops you're doing, you need to decide if you want them to be exactly the same diameter as the first loops, or if you want them to go in a little bit. A lot of mine I will do where I attach each layer in just a little bit more, but sometimes I do them where they're all the same going, so when you look at the backer, all the loops are exactly the same around, so it looks like the same, you know, exact diameter circle. So it just depends on the look you're going for. Plus, with those ribbon spikes behind those second set of loops, I wanted to attach them in a little bit so you could really see those spikes. So just think about your design and how you want to attach them, but you also have to think about your flower size. You know, if you take them in too much, once you put your flower on there, you may cover them up completely. So it's a good idea to have your flower close by and to keep putting it on the backer just to see how it's looking as you're making it, to make sure everything is where you want it, because you don't want to go through all that work and just to cover up some loops. And then also you don't want the loops to go out too far off the backer and then go to attach the flower and have too much space. So you really want it to be just right. It's got to be just right, have those loops sticking off the backer just the right amount where you don't see any staples and there's not too much of a gap. If there is too much of a gap, you can take them off and then reattach them closer in on the backer, or you can just go and make a whole nother layer and make sure that you attach those in another inch, half an inch, whatever it needs for that flower size. So you don't have to go and buy a whole new flower. You can just add more loops if you need to. This is how I secure my flowers. I've shown this on videos a bunch of times, but somebody new could be watching, so I'll explain it. I cut off the excess of that stem, or not the stem, the little green part on the bottom of the flower. Now I'm adding the white chenille stem. I'm tying a couple of knots in there so it doesn't pull through. Make it kind of a ball at the end, and then I pull it all the way through. You don't want to yank it too tight. You just want to make sure you pull it all the way down. and then you'll add hot glue where that knot is to double the security. And of course, let that glue completely set before you try attaching that to your mum. I'm also going to spray the mum flower with that glitter to glitter the flower up. Before I attach the loops to my ribbon for the loop chain, I like to lay out my loops first and see how I'm going to attach them first, because you may want to space them way out, you may need them close together, you may want to kind of zigzag them a little bit, you may want them completely straight. I know that 17 inches needs to be showing, and I want all the loops to show, so I'm playing around with them to see how close together they need to be, so I don't start attaching them and then realize that they're too close together, they're too far apart, and then have to undo them. So I like to do this step first, and then it'll save you a lot in the long run. You won't attach them exactly as you've got them laid out, but it will give you a really good idea of how they need to be, how close together they need to be, and which way you want to attach them. Now for this design, for these mini mums and pee-wee mums with the one layer of ribbons that are layered, I always do one braid or chain and it goes right in the center. Now they can purchase extra braids and chains if they want, and then I'll attach them differently, but that's the reason why it's in the center. It just looks better if it's in the center. To me it does for this style and design. Now I do have some tiny that are even smaller, and I try to make them look like a regular mum but really really small, so those will have like 2 or 3 braids or chains on them usually. Now on that ribbon, I had made some homecoming ribbons last year before mum season in different colors and different lengths, and I was able to use a few of them. I did sell several of them on Etsy too, but I would forget to check, and I would forget during the mum making process to even look if I had one already made in that color. But I just happened to remember to look on that one, and it was a glitter. It was the silver shimmer vinyl, so it was already blinged, and I'd already had the diamond mesh bling glued on there, so that was perfect, and it fit perfectly on there. So that can save you some time too if you make up some things like that in advance. Now they want to wear this as pin-on version, so I'm making a loop for that. And I want to use, again, a pretty ribbon, but this is a sheer glitter ribbon, so it's not going to be as strong, the wired ribbon. So I'm doubling it up with a solid ribbon, and I believe that's just an acetate ribbon. It may be a soft satin, but I think it's an acetate. I don't like to use just an acetate or luster by itself because if they put the pin through that, it can rip the ribbon and then it's just going to go to shreds. Now if they put it through the loop, you'll be okay, but if they actually pin that through the ribbon, then it can rip. So that's why, another reason why I'm doubling it up too with the organza or sheer ribbon there. Even though it's got glitter on it too, it's still a lot thinner, and I want to make sure that it holds up. Now when I send them a safety pin, I put the safety pin through the loop. I don't put it through the ribbon. And I'm hoping that they will take the hint and wear it that way. They can put it through their loop if they want to, but they are taking a chance of ribbons tearing. No matter what kind of ribbon you use, they could always take a chance of it tearing. So I always put it through the loop, not through the ribbon. See, show you right there, and hope that they will wear it that way. But it may not work on their, you know, maybe too far up or something. So you have to keep that in mind too. And you saw that I staple the crud out of that sucker. I want it on there very, very well. This is just a little button. You can get this in the sewing department. These are probably from Hobby Lobby, but I believe you can get them at other stores as well. And I'm just going to put it right in the center of a little accent bow, and it just gives your bow a little something fun and extra right there in the center. This is one of my quick, easy bows. It's one of my favorite bows to do as an accent bow. It's so easy. So simple and easy. Just pinch it right there in the center. Make sure your loops are nice and twisted. Give it that little twist when you put the loops together. And just twist that chenille stem a couple of times, and you'll probably have to cut off some extra. But the chenille stem also helps on hanging it on trinkets and bells and such, because you can put it through the hole of the trinket if it's a trinket that has a little hanger on it. And then you can twist it together. And I kind of hide it under the bow so you can't see it. And you kind of want to make sure that there's no ends sticking out that can poke somebody, and because those things can get kind of sharp. But you see, that's just a fun little accent bow on that large trinket. it's ready for the backer to be attached. I want to make sure that the backers are lined up evenly, but I also want to see how I want the backer on there. The design of the backer, you know, you can turn it and twist it and it'll look completely different. Unless it's the same loops all the way around, like twisted loops or whatever, or just regular loops all the way around, same color and everything, then it's going to look the same no matter where you attach it. But if you're using different style of loops and spikes and stuff, you can make it look completely different just by where you attach the backer. And by where, I mean like what you pick to be the top and the bottom or the sides. So just think about that. Don't just throw it up there. You can kind of move it around, circle it, twist it like it was a steering wheel, I guess, and you'll get completely different looks. So just see how exactly you like it the best and then do it that way. And I am hot gluing. First I staple a couple of staples just to make sure it's in the exact place that I want it so it doesn't move, and then I start hot gluing it. And what I did there was I got the end of that glue stick hot, kind of melted it a little bit, and then stuck it in there. That way it would glue itself to the old glue stick. So, because you know when you put a new glue stick in there and you pick up your glue gun and then the glue stick falls out of the back? So if you glue it together, it won't do that. Now that it's glued, now I'm going to go around and give it a staple all the way around as far as I can reach on the inside and the middle. Sometimes you can't reach all the way in there. Do the best you can. If you can't get all the way in there, then I make sure I put some glue in there and kind of press it down and just make sure that those backers are nice and secured, because I don't like that if there's a big old gap in there. Like if you could look under the backer and see a huge gap, I don't like that. That's just one of my pet peeves. So I want my backers to be nice and tight fitted together. I want them really secure and smushed down. I don't like any gaps. That is just a huge pet peeve of mine. You just make your way around. You just want to make sure it's nice and secure and you are good to go. Then you can attach your flower after that. Now the flower is so easy. You just run that chenille stem through the hole of those backers, and you do want to pull it nice and snug. And then the first thing I do is staple it. So I pull it really tight. I don't know if you can tell, but it's pulled really tight. And I want to give it a couple of staples. I want to make sure, be careful where I'm stapling and not staple any loops down or anything. I'm going to cut off the excess and kind of push that down a little bit. That's the first step. Now you want to glue the flower down. So I pick up the flower in usually about 3 or 4 different places, and I will glue that down. And I don't know what I'm looking at. Sometimes the flower will kind of move on you a little bit, but I'm not sure what I'm doing. This was several months ago, so I don't remember what I'm doing there, but you do want to glue the flower down all the way around. Maybe I'm going to add something else. This is new for me too. I'm editing, I'm voice-overing as I'm going. We will see. What is Hyla doing? Come on, I want some guesses. If we're doing a live chat, I want everybody to start guessing. What is Hyla doing right now? What is she going to add? Is she adding something? My guess is that I'm adding something to the mum. Tinsel. Told you. I knew it. Even though I don't remember because it was so long ago, and I honestly don't even have any good photos or videos of this mum. I did a video of packing. I think it was this one that I packed this mum up for shipping. And so thinking about that, I didn't even think about taking it outside and getting good photos. I was so mad at myself. So, but at least I made the mum on video, so I have that. And then I'm pretty sure this was the one that I shipped, because I actually made 2 that were pretty similar. They were friends and they wanted similar mums. They both got the mini extra long and they both got a custom cutout. I don't think the other one got bling. I can't remember for sure. So they got different braids, but and then I used different fonts and stuff, but it was the same school and the same school colors and the same design and everything. So, I had to struggle to make them look differently. So I'm just making some tinsel balls. I'm just twisting that tinsel up and then gluing it on there. If I had done this in advance, I would staple them and then maybe add a little glue too, but you can staple it on the back, or if you do it in advance. I just wanted to add a little sparkle behind that flower, I'm sure. I can't say for sure what I was thinking, but that would be my guess because that's usually what happens when I add tinsel. So I'm curious to see what everyone thinks. I hope people chatted on there and said what they thought I was adding or what I was going to do there. So now I'm going in between those gaps and gluing that down because you don't want any of that under stuff to show. I mean, you're securing the flower in another way, first of all, to make sure it doesn't come off. But you're also covering up all those staples and all that underside that you don't want anybody to look at. So that's the purpose for gluing it down. You want to be careful when you flip it over because you don't want to damage anything. Now I can tell you what I'm doing. That's a nice shot. I think I'm going to crop that out right after I'm done with this voiceover. That's me bent over if I'm able to crop that out. I'm just putting a clean black backer on there. You want to make sure you get a clean backer. You don't want those staples showing. You don't want to ask someone to wear a mum and have all those staples sticking to their clothes and cutting them up and scratching them and stuff. I have actually seen somebody give someone a mum with the staples all showing with no clean backer on the back. I have actually witnessed that. Please, please, please do not do that. If you run out of backers, go in your kitchen, grab yourself a paper plate and cut a circle. Get it is, if you don't have like a Cricut or something where you can cut a clean circle, or you don't have a circle cutter, do the best you can. It's going to look way better than having those staples. And if you don't have paper plates, use some kind of other chipboard. If you have some kind of frozen meals or something, just use the grayish kind of brownish cardboard inside look to it, not the printed side. It'll be better than nothing, especially if it's for your kid or something. Now, if you're selling that mom and you sell it like that, oh, please don't do that. Please, please, please. Please give them a clean backer. You could also cut, and I've done this for some mums. I still always do a layer of a clean backer. Let me say that first. But I also sometimes will cut circles in vinyl in different colors like royal blue or something, and then cover that backer with the royal blue vinyl. It's just something, especially if the backer like got messed up a little bit, or maybe a staple was showing out the bottom or something like that. There was just something that it needed to be cleaned up a little bit, or I just wanted to be fun and add some more color. I would do that. And so just add that circle to the very back and it gives it more color. Not like anybody really sees it, but it's just a little fun thing I've done a few times. Now I'm attaching the custom cutout. I glued that on. I set some scissors on there to kind of weigh it down. That was like two options I gave her, two different options, because that one, it's a little more yellow, like golden yellow, but the other one's more of the bright softball like you would think, but she still liked the bigger one better, so I want to give her a couple options. But again, on the back side, if you have any staples that are showing that you accidentally stapled down too low on the backer and they show, just add a dab of hot glue, let that hot glue set, and it'll just cover that staple up so it doesn't scratch anybody. Not a big deal. So I let that set because you don't want to be sticking your fingers under there and squishing and getting hot glue all over yourself. So I let it set for a few seconds, and then I go through and I stick my fingers underneath and start smushing, and I just want to make sure I'm smushing the flower and the custom cutout together to really secure it. But like I said, I let it set for a little bit. That way it's not hot when I'm sticking my fingers in there. And this mum is finished. Now you can take those custom cutouts and kind of give them a little twist if they're not straight up and down, or you're wanting them a little crooked. You can a lot of times give them a little twist and they'll move. That unfortunately is the best picture I got of this mum, which is upsetting, but it's better than nothing. And I did do a video of boxing this up. I'll try to put a link, a card. If you look at the top right hand of the video, there'll be like 4 or 5 cards that'll come across throughout this video. You can tap up there and it'll show you. So I'll put a link to that, but that's just a quick of one little section of it.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please do that. Don't forget to
Link
tap
right
that
here
bell
to
for
subscribe to my
notifications
channel.
when I
Here
upload
is my
live
most
streams.
recent
Videos.
upload.
I upload
Here is
videos
a playlist.
just about every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m.
Here is a
Central
playlist I
Standard
think you
Time.
will enjoy, and here is one more video.
I also do live
Here is
streams.
one more video I think you will enjoy.
Lucy!